Concerti e Giardini della Montella con la professoressa Angi Hobbs. Good evening, Professor Hobbs.
Good evening, lovely to be here.
Okay, let's start with the first question. If you could go to dinner with some historical character, who would you go with?
Well, I'm somebody, I've loved the philosopher Platone ever since I was a teenager. It would have to be him. And there's so many questions I want to ask him about how much he agrees with the views he puts into the mouth of Socrates, how much he wants us to question those views. And the lovely thing is, I think Plato would agree to have dinner with me because he did allow women to come to his lectures. Very unusually in ancient Greece, he allowed women to come to his lectures, and we have good evidence that a few did come. So he did practice what he preached. And of course, in the Republic, he argues very strongly that women should play a role in the state. There should be philosopher queens as well as philosopher kings. Women should be in the army. So I think he would agree to talk with me, and we'd have a really wonderful but also very witty and engaging conversation.
So we can even say that Plato was a feminist in a kind of way.
Well, he certainly doesn't want the state to lose out on all the qualities and energy and talents that women can bring to it. I'm not sure how much he cares about an individual woman achieving her potential, but you could say the same about his views about an individual man as well.
Okay, next question. How do you think this festival how do you think this festival impacts our society?
I think at the moment it's absolutely crucial. A look at all the things sweeping the world at the moment. Some of the topics I'm going to be talking about this evening, the nationalism, the nativism, the tribalism, the attacks on education and reason and fact, and attacks on the foundations and supports of liberal democracy. This is a very dangerous time for the world, particularly in the West, and it's absolutely crucial that festivals like this, which celebrate argument and reason and reflective thought, and also an international community bringing people together, absolutely crucial. We need festivals like this now more than ever. So I'm really happy to encourage and take part in this movement for the future.
Maybe it's a question that you get a lot of time, but how did you get passionate about philosophy?
That's a really interesting question. I think it goes back to my childhood. I grew up in a home where we debated everything over the dinner table. We debated free will. We debated if God is good, why do bad things happen? Nothing was out of bounds in the family in which I grew up. And then when I was in sixth form, when I was about 16, 17, at school we studied Lucretius's De Rerum Natura, and that really got me hooked on the free will debate. What kind of responsibility do we have for our actions? What is in our control? What is out of our control? That was the first topic that got me hooked. Then I went to university to study classics, Latin and Greek, and that was when I came across Plato for the first time, and I came across his fabulous dialogue about eros, erotic love and beauty, the Symposium. So that it was the Symposium that just sold philosophy to me.
Okay, your chief interests are philosophy, ethics, literature and political theory. When did you understand that was important to spread those interests?
Yes, I think increasingly over the last 20 years. So I started doing radio programs and some television programs for the BBC and other media, over 20 years ago, and I was doing more and more. And I noticed that whenever I discussed a philosophical argument or concept, there was always a huge response. There were always lots of emails and then later on tweets and texts and so on. And I knew from my first-hand experience that there was a public out there absolutely hungry to think through issues more deeply, than newspapers and politicians and the television often allow us to do. They were a public fed up with sound bites, fed up with being patronised, and really longing to think about why we're here, how do we best live together, how can we be happy, what's the role of virtue in happiness, those big questions.
That everyone asks.
Exactly. I mean, this is my point, that really we all do philosophy in our lives. We just don't know we're doing it, and we maybe don't have as many tools to do it with as we might like. So all I'm trying to do is to bring out the real meaning of the word education, to lead out, to bring out what's already in people, a curiosity about our role in the world, how best to live individually and communally. And I'm just trying to say, look, philosophy can give you some tools of conceptual analysis, of argument. Let me show you some doors to go through. So I see my role really as just pointing people towards doors and trying to open the doors for them to walk through, because as we all know, philosophy is something you have to do for yourself. Nobody else can pour philosophy into your head. It's a journey you have to go on by yourself. It's an active participant's role. My job is simply to help people go on that journey and to point some directions and say, look, have you considered this? Have you read this? Have you thought about that argument? It's such fun, why not?
It's amazing. It's amazing. How did you get inspiration to write Plato and the Hero?
Well, I'd always been very, very interested in conceptions of courage, and that was something I specialised in a lot as an ethical philosopher. Now, as you know, the ancient Greek word for courage is andreia, manliness. You can't actually technically call somebody courageous in ancient Greek without also calling them manly. So that got me very, very interested in notions of what is it to be a man. What is the role of men? What are good and bad ways of being a man? I got fascinated by Homer and the different models of manliness he gives us with Achilles, with Odysseus and so on. And then I found out about Plato's lifelong fascination with these questions and the way that Plato throughout his life engages with Homer, tries to work out what is it to be a man, what is courage, are there different virtues for men and women, or actually are there just virtues for being a human? So those were questions I'd been thinking about for a long time, and I thought that as a woman it would be rather presumptuous of me to write the book, and I was waiting for a man to write it, but no man did, and so I thought, oh well, don't wait for a man, let's just go and do it. And of course now I would never for a second wait for a man to do anything, but I was younger then and a bit more nervous. Now I would never dream of waiting for a man to tell me what to do or what to think.
Your book, as you say, is focused on courage, on manliness. Do you think it still affects our world, our society, and do you think it's still needed for men because they will feel less without it, without manliness?
I think it's still a hugely important issue because everybody needs to have a sense of self-respect. And that's another reason I love Plato. He doesn't just analyse our psyche into notions of reason and the appetites. He says we have a third element in our psyche. He calls it the thumos. But it's all to do with your sense of respect and self-respect and feeling that you count for something, that other people are noticing you and that you're significant in the world.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, does a sense of self-respect have to be associated with a sense of your gender? And I think that's a much more fluid question. I would hope we could get a sense of self-respect through feeling we're human beings. However, it's clearly the case in the world at the moment that there are quite a few angry men out there.
Yeah.
And it's clear that there are a lot of people who do think that being male, being female is important for their sense of self-worth. I don't always agree with them, but I want to listen to what they have to say and how they think and feel and try to address those issues. For example, I've noticed that in the election of Donald Trump in America, there was quite a lot of rhetoric about how, certain kinds of men in America, particularly a certain kind of white man, is getting self-respect back. Now, those are not views with which I'm in sympathy, but the point is I need to listen to them. I not necessarily condone them or agree with them, but you have to listen first. I also noticed, I heard quite a few women in America who'd voted for Trump, and I saw a woman being interviewed, a group of women being interviewed, why didn't you vote for Hillary Clinton? And they said, well, we couldn't have a woman as leader. It wouldn't be right. It's not the job of women to lead, it's the job of women to obey men. Now that view is extremely different from how I view the world, but one has to understand it and hear it before you can engage in conversation, before you can try to change people's minds. You have to understand them, so you have to listen first. So, whether we like it or not, there are debates still in the world about manliness and indeed womanliness. And of course the whole issue of gender fluidity at the moment, the whole notion of transgender and the way that our science is making it easier for people to change sex. So these issues are still relevant.
Okay, the last question. Back to 2012, how did you feel to be the first professor of public understanding of philosophy in the UK?
Yes, well, and indeed in the world, I believe.
Yeah.
I think it's the only job of its kind in the world. Well, I mean, it's an extraordinary honour and privilege. It's very exciting. There are moments of nerves, clearly. However, the point is that I passionately believe that philosophy can help us think through some of the issues with which we're faced at the moment, to do with nationhood and nationalism, which I'm discussing here today, to do with democracy and demagoguery, to do with the migration crisis. There are to do with money, the ethics of money and banking. There are so many issues where I so strongly believe that philosophy can help. So I thought there was a job that needed to be done. And I'd reached an age where I was no longer going to wait for somebody else to do the job. I thought, well, I'm being offered this job, why not do it? And of course it's very exciting to be able to create a job. And to some extent, nobody can tell you you're doing the job wrong because nobody else has done it. So it gives you a certain amount of freedom.
It was beautiful to talk to you. Thank you, Professor Hobbs. It was a pleasure.
Well, it was a delight. Molto piacere. Sono molto lieta di essere qui. And thank you so much. Thank you. Tante grazie.
Thank you too.